0500 UTC. The cockpit of the escape pod had been cozy. The storage compartment was downright cramped, especially as we were in there for the better part of a half hour. I checked my watch to be sure. "Ow," Steph said quietly. "Sorry." I had set my watch's secondary clock to UTC as a somewhat symbolic gesture of fighting for Earth, and had been in the habit of checking it every 5 minutes like I was back in high school and waiting for global studies to end. The pod had come to a stop inside the ship maybe 10 minutes before. We heard the hatch open and Claus cursorily going through the box of food, empty weapons box, and scrap of medkit bandage that we'd left outside as bait, and, in the case of the boxes, to make room in the storage locker. We just barely managed to fit the medkit box into the compartment with us. I figured that their lizard-like bodies would be less flexible than we primates and wouldn't even consider looking in the compartment, and fortunately I was right. I hadn't mentioned to Steph that this assertion was cast into doubt when I saw a latch on the inside. I think she noticed it too, but there were no other options. Now we stared warily at the latch in the wan blue light from the charge indicators on our guns. The search had ended, but there was no telling if there were still any guards around. "What do we do when we get out?" Steph asked. "We don't have a voice giving us objectives or anything." I tried my best to shrug. She couldn't see it, but I think she got the message. Shoot things until the ship blows up. Original. Stick with the classics. I took a deep breath. "Ready?" "No." She did the same. "Do it." I slowly popped the latch and lowered it. The canopy of the pod was open. Carefully unwinding myself, I peeked over the lip. 2 aliens were to my left, and 1 to my right, with none of them looking at me. I silently relayed positions to Steph and told her to go after the 1. She took a moment to interpret my hand motions, then gave me a nod. I then counted down. 3 fingers. 2. 1. I popped up and fired, missing on my first shot but hitting with my second. Then turned to the other alien and winged him with my first shot, enough to throw him to the ground where I hit him again. I heard more shots behind me. I couldn't afford mistrusting Steph's aim and vaulted over the side of the pod. Looking towards the back of the craft, I saw another alien turning towards me. I shot and missed, but a shot from my left hit him square in the snout. "Nice," I let out, then looked around quick. We weren't in a huge hangar like I had feared. There were 6 smallish craft in the bay, bigger than our escape pod but much smaller than the transport that the scouts had been flying down on the surface. The bay wasn't much bigger than these things, and was maybe 3 stories tall. Hard to tell with alien architecture, where circles and trapezoids colluded with green lighting to make perspective headache-inducing. Steph apparently took it in faster than I did, or just prioritized better. "Boater." "Yeah?" "Green lights." "Oh, shit. There." I pointed at an alcove next to what I hoped was a door, and we ran for it. We squeezed in and waited, and after a minute or so we heard the adjacent door open, and 6 more guards came out. We waited a moment. Then when the door closed again, we shot them down too. Though bright, the guns were actually pretty quiet, and agonized yelling more than the sound of gunfire itself is what alerted the last few guards. They got a couple of scarily close shots off back at us, but we were able to take them out too. "Not too flexible," I observed. Steph nodded. We had an advantage. I covered her as she grabbed a backup pistol as well, then searched quickly for a charging cable and yanked a visor off of one of the bodies. We then moved quickly to the door. I prayed I wouldn't find more hand scanners. Though it was neat and gruesome in prey, I didn't want to have to drag an alien's severed, mangy hand around with me. Fortunately, the glowing button that was a foot or so off the ground was just a pressure plate. The circular door irised open, revealing a wide trapezoidal hallway in front of us. Nobody patrolled it. In fact, it was eerily quiet. I took point, and Steph covered behind us. It was probably too much to hope for a map on the wall with an indicator for "you are here" and another for "blow this up," but we still looked around. We were in a hallway that seemed to stretch the circumference of the ship. We proceeded clockwise, hitting pressure plates with our feet to open doors, allowing our hands to stay free on the guns. Adjacent to the bay we came in were more bays identical to it, except without the craft. I assumed that they were fighter craft of a sort and were already deployed. I tried not to think about the ramifications of that. In another room along the inside wall was a low table and long slim cushions, recalling the seat in the escape pod and probably the closest thing that we'd find to chairs. On the table were various odds and ends. One looked like a tablet, an iPad or something, though with a differently contoured casing, again in the trapezoid that they seemed to prefer. I picked it up and ran the geometry through my head. To my best guess, it'd be held in a claw with the long edge held in the claw, facing downward when walking, then brought up with the claw holding it at the top, with the tablet resting against the forearm. I tried it out, and my left hand felt the familiar though clunky contours of the alien claws that I'd been feeling with the gun in my right. I'd successfully figured out which way was up. Go humanity! Didn't help with legibility of the text across the top or the hex grid of circular icons on the rest of the display. Help me find the map app, I said to Steph. We each devoted one eye to the display and one to the entrance of the room. The app icons, ease of discussion here, people, didn't seem familiar. What might have been obvious to them was obfuscating to us. I tried sliding the display side to side and up and down, but it only had one page, or had a less obvious way of changing between them. There was a blank icon with a single character on it. I opened it, and it was a notepad of some sort, with a small keyboard on screen. Useless. And to make matters worse, I couldn't figure out how to get it back. Give, Steph said. I handed it over. She hit a few buttons while I kept my gun trained on the door. She got frustrated and started hitting more buttons, then grabbed it by both sides and shook it furiously. Ha! What, get it to work? Just shake it, she proclaimed triumphantly. Chalk up another one for humanity. We had been trained from a young age by Etch-a-Sketches to return an alien iPad to the home screen. She passed the tablet back to me. I entered Notepad again, shook it again to be sure, and giggled like a little boy. A voice came over some loudspeakers in the room. Instinctively we listened, though we couldn't recognize a single word. Our combined half-dozen years of Spanish classes were of course no help in deciphering such an alien tongue, but it was at least recognizably language. I turned my attention back to the tablet and sighted another app icon. It looked a little bit like intersecting streets, but it might have also been a sigil in their script. I hesitated a moment, then hit it. Another group of icons replaced the home screen. I thought I recognized a contact list. Some were alien faces. One or two were fighters. One was a ball of some sort. Others were too abstract for me to wrap my head around. I tapped one of them, and the tablet started beeping. I grimaced and looked at Steph. What did you do? She said exasperatedly. Nothing, I said. Maybe started Skype. Stop breaking shit. I'm not breaking nothing. Stop breaking shit. My retort was cut off by a voice from the tablet. I looked down and saw an alien face. Whoops. Video chat. I shook the tablet harder than a child's first snow globe and hoped that had hung it up. Boring conversation anyway. Steph? Yeah, I know. She focused on the door as I gave the app icon list one more look through. Let's try this one. I hit an icon that had a trapezoid next to a hexagon. It was presented with what looked like, lo and behold, a map. Yes! I proclaimed, jumping for joy and returning the pad to the home screen. Damn it, there has to be a lock button somewhere. I glanced around quickly but didn't see anything and just went back to the map. In the center of the screen was a hexagon. I figured that it was a top-down view of the ship. It was roughly split into two trapezoidal hemispheres, somewhere geometry teacher is crying, what I hoped was front and back. I looked through and tried to decipher where engines might be and where a bridge might be, where a reactor might be. With the legend in the upper left corner useless, it was rough. In the upper right corner was a slider. I scrolled through it and the map loaded up different floors of the ship, 6 in total. The bottom floor had different sized bays around its outer ring. These passed through to the upper floors as well, being up to 4 floors high. At the bottom of the screen was a cutout area that none of the floors went into. I assumed that this is where the reactor and engines would be. Going on pure conjecture, I figured that the middle of the bottom 4 floors would be living quarters and the top 2 would be command decks. It's an awful lot of assumptions, Steph said as I explained this to her. Better than flying blind. Not by much. It's something. With the target in mind, we knew where we had to go. Now to find out where we were. Should I try to find a GPS sort of thing? Don't risk it, they can probably track us with it. Damn government.